When you flee from sin and evil, do you look back? Hi, my name is Keith, and this is My Daily Walk. My daily walk today takes me to Genesis chapter 19. It's the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And so I'm going to start in verse 1, but I'm going to break it up a little bit today as I go through these verses, because there's a lot of things that really kind of strike me in these verses. And I have my pup with me today, my golden retriever, so if he's a little bit of a distraction, I apologize, but he wants lots of hugs and pets. So as we go to Genesis 19:1, it says this: "The two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom." So the story starts with God sending these two angels, and Abraham was bargaining with these angels if we look at the end of chapter 18, and he was trying to get them to not destroy the city. So he said if there's 50 men or 30 men, 20 men, he whittles it down to if there's 10 men in this city, will you not destroy the city? And so they agree that if there's 10 men, we won't destroy the city. And they couldn't even find 10 righteous men. So these angels show up, and they're warning Lot that they're going to destroy the city. So as we move into verse 4, it says this: "Before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man surround the house," and that's Lot's house. "And they called to Lot, 'Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, that we may know them.'" As we read further down, we see that Lot begs these men to not be wicked. And it becomes eventually so overwhelming that these angels come and rescue Lot and his family, and they strike the men of the city with blindness. And these men are doing everything they can, even in their blindness, to get to the door, to get to the doorknob. And they're trying so hard in their evil and in their wickedness that it wears them down. And so Lot is in a place that is just filled with evil, filled with wickedness, filled with sexual sin. And yet he doesn't realize it. He's been there for some time, and he is now at a place where he has to be rescued by angels, because under his own thinking and his own, common sense, he hasn't even realized that he's living in such a wicked place. And if you look earlier in the story, you'll see that he was even willing to give his own daughters, his own virgin daughters, up to these men of the city. And sin and temptation, it'll cause us to do some pretty amazing things. As we move down into verses 15 and further on, "As morning dawned, the angels urged Lot, saying, 'Up, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, lest you be swept away in the punishment of the city.' But he lingered," it says in verse 16. "So the men seized him and his wife and his two daughters by the hand, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city." So in these verses we see that God saves Lot from the wickedness and from the destruction. And so the fury begins. And there's a few things that we need to be reminded of as well, is that Lot's wife ends up looking back. And it's a very familiar story. She turns into a pillar of salt. What? Anyway, sorry about that. Got my dog here. I'll be back. Okay, so we learn about Lot's life by watching what he has done, and one of the first things that we can learn from this story is that he has always been tempted by the flesh. He chose the choicest land. He lives in a place that's full of wickedness, and it took angels of the Lord to rescue him. And the thing that really strikes me in that whole thing is that verse 16, where it says he lingered. I can't imagine an angel of the Lord coming to me or someone I know that's just living in rampant sin and saying, "You need to escape. We're going to destroy this place," and lingering. To me, it just seems like if he had any idea or any concept of how powerful these angels were, these men that came to him who were angels, that he would just immediately take him and his family and escape the city. The third thing that is interesting to me in this whole story is that Lot's wife looks backwards and she becomes a pillar of salt. And I think that's a real lesson to us today, that when we look back to our sin, to the things that were causing us to stumble, it just brings death. When we're entangled in sin, it causes us to do pretty stupid things. So a few lessons that I wrote down, and I'm going to read these so I don't lose track here. The temptations of the world will always lead to sin and death. James 1:15 says, "Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death." The second thing I learned from this today was, when you flee from the bondage of sin, don't turn back. Years ago at a church, whenever anyone was baptized, they would sing a chorus, and I can't think of the whole song, but the chorus goes, "And I'll never go back to my old life ever again." Sorry, horrible singing. But the point is that when you are baptized in the name of Christ and you've turned over your life to Him, there's no turning back. You turn back and it's going to be worse than it was when you started. And the third thing that I learned from this was, don't linger. Lot lingered. The angels actually had to force him out, which is just mind-boggling to me. He didn't trust what the angels had, and what God had for him was better than what was to come. Isaiah 26:3 says this, "You keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you." So I encourage you today to read through chapters 18 and 19. Lot's rescued. His wife, unfortunately, looks back. She can't handle the temptation. She's turned into salt, and him and his daughters flee. But if you look at the rest of the story, it really isn't all that great. So the moral of the story for you and me, I think there's a couple, 2 or 3 things that I take from this. One is, when temptations come, to flee. Don't wait for the angel of the Lord to show up. Don't wait for, God's writing in the sky. When you see temptation, recognize it and flee. And another one is that temptation will always lead to sin and death. It doesn't matter how much we think we can control it. Temptations come and they lead to sin and death. But thankfully, we have a God that will rescue us from those temptations. And thirdly, trust in the Lord with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. If Lot would have trusted in those angels of the Lord, his wife would be alive, his family would have been in better shape than they were at the end. But trusting in the Lord is the way to go. He knows what's best for you and your family. So my question to you today is, are you entangled in sin? Are you wanting to run back to some old ways, running back to some old places that you've encountered in your life? And if you are, I encourage you to just turn those over to the Lord. Don't wait for an angel to appear. Don't wait for God to tap you on the shoulder. He's there. He's listening. He knows that you need His help. So I encourage you to pray. And if you need help with that, we would love to pray with you. At Daily in Christ Ministries, we're here to pray for you, to pray alongside you, and to encourage you in the things of the Lord. If you need a touch from Him today, just feel free to connect with us. And if you like these videos, then feel free to share them with your friends and subscribe to the channel. Sorry about the dog today. He's a bit distracting, but we went on a walk, and so he's still a little looking forward to having some fun. So anyway, I appreciate you watching, and I encourage you today to walk in Christ and to flee from sin, run as fast as you can from it, and to always give glory and honor to Him. God bless.